Welcome to Dare Yourself. I'm Natalie Kogan. I'm coming to you, as always, from my art studio, and we're here to talk about using change as your catalyst to grow into who you are truly capable of becoming, one dare at a time. And my guest today, I cannot wait for you to hear this conversation. Actually, I can't wait for myself to have this conversation. At 25, Celine left behind her corporate career, her apartment, and her relationship, and then she spent 9 months couch surfing with 70 strangers across 18 countries. I wrote this down to make sure I would get this right. And what she found on the other side is what she calls the burning ground. I can't wait to learn about that. And she has written a book with that as a title, and it is coming out on May 26th. Of course, we'll put all the details in the show notes. Celine, welcome to Dare Yourself.
Thank you so much. I'm excited to dive in with you. I'm very curious about how this is going to go.
Oh, I am so, well, we're going right in. Okay.
Let's go.
I got it right because I wrote this down, and I don't usually write like extensive notes because I just want to have a conversation, but I wanted to get it right. So you left everything behind, and then you literally couch surfed with 70 people you didn't know in 18 countries. Mm-hmm. Okay. So tell us about that. But one thing, the lens I want for you to go into it with is something that you say in the book, which is you were not running away. Like you'd think when someone doing that, they're running away from something. So tell us what you did and what was it that you were searching for?
Yeah. So it's interesting because when I was going on this trip where I left everything behind and decided to do a one-way circumnavigation, where I just dared myself, like I am going to leave everything that I know, and we can talk about why in today's conversation, and dare to circumnavigate the globe by couch surfing, but not using the app, not using the website, just through human connection, like 6 degrees of Kevin Bacon style, just through people that I was connected to. And just an important clarification I want to make. It was over 70 people. I would say about 80% of them were strangers, but then there were also friends or friends of friends and people that I met on the road. And so I went around the world and I started to travel, but I had a reason, and it's really interesting to talk about this in hindsight because back then when I was 25 years old, I didn't have the language for what was happening to me. I did not know what a spiritual awakening was. I did not know what the dark night of the soul, like none of that vocabulary, none of that was in my awareness consciousness. All I knew is that there was a force, there was a voice, which I later came to call my intuition, which I define intuition to me is the voice of soul. That's how I define it.
Beautiful.
And later on, I was like, oh, that was my intuition, but I didn't know that. I just knew that there was a voice. It was speaking to me. And what that voice was saying was, you need to change your life because the path that you're walking on right now leads to death. Not like literal death, but like death of my soul. Like if I keep going this direction, it is a dead end. It's not going to go well. But if I change directions, there's hope for me. But the thing is that I didn't know how, and I didn't know what that direction would bring me. I literally didn't know. And I just kept trying to scramble for like, how do I not take this path? And this is something I talk about in detail in the book where, I would be like, okay, let me just apply to different, I was working in a brand strategist in an advertising agency in New York City. And the sequence of the way that I thought about it was, okay, let me just apply to different jobs in different cities. And then I hit a wall, realized, no, I have to leave America. Okay, let me apply to jobs in Europe, in a different continent. Okay, didn't work, hit a wall. Okay, so let me try to apply to different industry in a different continent and hit a wall again, only to realize like that's not what I need to be doing. And in a process that I talk about in my book, I had this like eureka moment where I realized, what if I have to scrap all of it and do something absolutely insane? And the reason why I need to do this is so I can find my purpose, so I can find what I'm really here to do, what will give me meaning in my life. And so I wasn't running away from a life that, the life that I had was, I was miserable and I didn't like it. And there were so many things that kept me constrained, but it didn't feel like I'm running away from that life. It felt like I was running towards something that I knew to be true within me, but mentally, cognitively, had no fucking idea how, where, like, I just had a direction and I knew I need to go, I need to go. And I also knew there was little pieces of information that were revealed to me. Like I knew that I had to go. I knew that I had to circumnavigate the globe, which I talk about how I knew that in the book. And I also knew that so long as I did three things, which was meet people, travel, and write, I would find what I was looking for. So I'll leave it there.
Well, there's so many threads I want to pull on. The first, and just to connect with you on this, you know, you talk about what you weren't available for at 25, right? Like understanding the voice of intuition. So I just want to share with you that I think for me, I'm 50. I think I was only around 40 years old when I started to wake up to that. So I just, for our listeners, right? If you're listening to this, like, hey, have patience with yourself. There is no deadline for this. We all have that. We all have a soul. We all have that inner voice, but there's no schedule for when you start to hear it. At 25, I did not hear it.
Wow.
I was so attached to my path. I did not hear it. So I think it's actually very beautiful that you didn't know what it was, but you started to hear it.
Yeah.
Okay.
Gosh. And can I just add to that?
Yeah, of course.
Natalie, something that really strikes me, and I'm really, really glad that you say that, is because even when I'm working with people, like I know I have one of my clients who's in her 60s, and she really only started that process. We've been working together for 6 years. And at the beginning of our work together, she would say all the time, God, like, why didn't I figure this out sooner? And, you know, people have also asked me, like, when you were 25, how did you know that it was time to change your life? And what I share is, I didn't. This is one of those moments where it's God's grace. This is what, like, that awakening, that first wave of awakening, it happens because it happened, and there's like no amount of, I can't track it. It's just grace, and it just happens in the timeline that it happens, and we have to trust that it's never too late. But you're always perfectly on time to get started on getting back in walking the path of your soul's journey.
100%. And I think it's such an important thing to say. You know, I work with a lot of people who are in their 40s, 50s, and 60s, women especially. And many of them have a similar experience to me where they're like, I've never heard that voice. I don't know what my soul's purpose is, because I think, and you probably encountered this in yourself as well at the time, is our cognitive brain, right, which is full of beliefs and stories and fears, it can get really dominant, right? And we start to live by it. So it's very hard to listen to that voice. But I want to go back to something you said. First of all, I had this visual when you were talking about, well, first I decided to just apply to different jobs, right? And then I decided to apply to, you know, same job, but in Europe. I looked at it, the visual that appeared for me are like the expanding spheres of safety. So like you started with, okay, like how can I just divert a little bit? Okay, different job. And then you were like, nope, not enough. And then you expanded beyond that. Okay, let's go to Europe. Okay, still. And I think it's actually very beautiful listening to you, because I think that's how we would all do it, right? We try the safer thing first, just to see if we can just shift a little bit, and then maybe that'll be enough, right? So I just wanted to reflect that. Like I just had this beautiful visual of you like literally expanding beyond each of the safety layers. Okay, so I want to learn a little bit more. I want you to share a little bit more of like, okay, you decide to go. So you go. Where was the first place that you went to?
So the first place that I went to was back to Italy, which is where I'm originally from. And speaking of the safety layers, when I decided I was going to go on this trip, I was like, okay, I'm going to start in my home country because that is where I'm most connected. So I landed in northern Italy. I forgot that Ferrara, whatever the airport closest to Ferrara is. And I headed to one of my father's friends' homes. And he's actually a spiritual mentor to me. And so chapter 4 has me kind of, you know, quote unquote, starting this trip in the home of a man who had mentored me since I was 18 and who had become, yeah, like a bit of a spiritual mentor to me. And basically, he reads my runes, which is an ancient, do you know what runes are? It's just an ancient, it's
But
kind of
go
like an
ahead. Would you
oracle
explain
card.
it to our
Yeah. So
listeners?
it's like these little rocks, like that each have a symbol on it, and similar to how you have a tarot card and you pull the cards and those cards tell your future. The runes is a method that has been, it's a method for oracling, if that's a word.
It's a
That's
word.
thousands,
We're making it a word.
okay, that's thousands of years old. And my mentor was like this man, Roberto. He's now in the heavens, but so bless him for everything he's done for me. He would read, every time I would visit him, he would read my runes, and he would basically tell me what was ahead. And it's really awesome because in chapter 4, you see him basically like predicting my entire trip, and it's like so not obvious, but he speaks in, when you go to the oracles and they say
Sure.
you will cross a path and in the moment a bird will fly and you'll know what to do, and it's never literally what they're saying. It's like, you meet somebody
Yeah.
and they have a bird tattoo, and like it's like,
Yeah. Yeah.
and he basically very eerily predicts what ends up becoming my trip, and then off I go. And then I started going northern Italy, through a friend of a friend's friend, and up through Austria, and then my trip begins.
So, okay, I love that. And okay, so you go to Italy, you start going around. I want you to share, I don't know, I just have this curiosity about this. Like the first few strangers, so non-friends that you stayed
Yeah.
with, like what was that like? And I just, I have to reveal my kind of self here. I'm a total homebody, and like I like my stuff. Like I'm not a good sleeper anywhere else other than my home. Like, and I travel for work so much, like I don't really sleep well on other people's couches or in hotels.
Mhm.
So I'm so curious, like you would come to their homes, and like, what was it like? How long were you staying with them roughly?
Yeah. So just to be like polite, I would do like 3 to 7 days. And there was some, for example, there's a host in Nepal that I talk about, and I was like, I had my things in his home for 3 weeks, but I would like go to another host and then come back. It was more of a base for
Sure.
a few weeks, but I would try to keep it 3 to 7 days, just because I would say that's the polite thing to do, especially for somebody you never met. So I would get connected to them, and I would get connected either, yeah, like I would reach out to my entire network. For example, I would meet you, Natalie, in our community, and I'd say, "Hey, Natalie, I'm going to Austria, and I'm doing this trip, and here's why I'm doing it," which we haven't spoken about yet. But the why was to not only find my soul purpose, but I wanted specifically to find it through trusting humans again. I specifically wanted to rewire the part of me that was so distrusting of humanity, and of just like life. And I knew that, and again, this is one of those things where the intuition's 5 steps ahead, and then the body's trying to catch up, and knowing, and the mind's like, "What the fuck are you doing?" But like soul already knows. Where on a soul level, I knew that I wanted to repair and heal the fear that I had around trusting humans and humanity as an extension of that. So that it was really important for me to do it that way. And so I would share with people, like, I have this dream. I want to travel the world. I'm going to make it back to New York. I'm currently in Austria or whatever country, and I want to make it back. Like, weird, crazy question, but do you like know anybody that's anywhere between here and New York that would be open to hosting me for a few days to support this project? So it was just really rallying people, and it was very, very shocking to me how many people said yes. I mean, you would think there would be a lot of resistance to this, but I didn't find, of all the ways that I struggled or all the challenges that I faced during this journey, I had the least amount of trouble with finding people. There was a few specific places like Dubrovnik or Santorini where they were so niche and it was so touristy that it was like particularly difficult to find somebody to
Yeah,
stay with.
yeah.
And I was down to the wire with it. But it was because of location rather than someone's willingness to host me. So So yeah, I mean, it was one of those things where I would ask and then I would show up in their homes. And you know what the crazy thing is? This is
Yeah.
something I actually haven't spoken about in any podcast yet. Um, I had Facebook Messenger. It was 2016, and I would maybe connect with them on Facebook or like yeah, mostly Facebook, I would say. And I wouldn't even click on their profiles. I swear to God, there'd be some hosts where I would not even click on their profiles, and I would literally like be on the way on the train, like on the way to meet them on Facebook Messenger, and realize, oh shit, I don't know what this person looks like.
Wow. Okay. My mouth, I'm sitting here with my mouth open. That's Celine's looking at because my jaw is to the floor.
Yeah.
Because that is a level of trust, right? And it's so, I don't know, it's so beautiful, right? That you take this journey so that you can rebuild your trust in humanity and kindness and human connection. And you're doing it in this very high stakes way where you don't have a lot of pre-existing trust. I mean, you're going into someone's home who you don't really know, and wow, you didn't even like do, Facebook like gawking at them.
No, no due diligence.
So, do you think that was intentional in some way on your soul's part is to kind of the way, it's the thing I'm thinking about, right? Is when I was little, my uncle, I grew up in Russia and I was actually born in Baku, which is Azerbaijan, right on the Caspian Sea. Very beautiful.
Oh, I've
And
been to Baku.
oh, beautiful. Not that many people have. I
I've
love
been to
that.
Azerbaijan, beautiful country.
Yeah, so that's where I was born. So I think when I was about 3, we'd go to the beach in the summer all the time. It's beautiful. And my uncle decided to teach me how to swim. And the way the Caspian Sea is, it goes shallow, deep, shallow, deep, shallow, deep. I don't know if you and the listeners know this. It's actually a lake, technically. It's called a sea, but it's the only saltwater lake in the world. But it goes shallow, deep, shallow, deep. And so my uncle he would go into the second shallow and he would carry me and he would just throw me into the deep and say, come to me. So I could see that there's very soon I can get to solid ground to him. I'm not sure I enjoyed it at the time, but in a way, it taught me to trust the water very quickly. Right? I didn't, as a 3-year-old, like I didn't understand flotation physics, but he would drop me and I would just, if I let go, I just floated and then I could get to solid ground. So to me, that's the interesting contrast. You wanted to rebuild trust and you did it in this very high stakes way of going into people's homes who you don't even know. So I think that's just remarkable. I want to ask you, you talked about that wasn't the hard part, and I love hearing that, but somehow I'm not surprised, Celine. I don't know. Like somehow I'm not surprised that there's all these people who are like, yes, please come stay here. So that wasn't a challenge. What were some of the challenges that you started to experience, and both internal, external, whatever you want to share?
So I would say, one of the stress points that wasn't the biggest challenge, so I'll go from least challenge to most challenge,
Great.
was traveling on such a tight budget. Like I did not have a big budget. I had allocated, and this is relative depending on countries but
Sure.
USD, like for Americans, I had $10,000 that I had saved to travel for like a year. That's not a lot. And so there was a lot of shoestring budget, and I wasn't working because I had left my job behind, and I had a savings, but that was the savings. And so something that blows people's minds, though, and this is maybe another story for another time, is that at the end of the 9 months, I had spent 8,500 of those 10,000, and I was doing I did everything I could possibly have wanted. I was not doing the things that I wanted to do. It wasn't like, oh, I did it and I was like on this really tight budget. It was like everything that I ever needed and wanted just manifested in the most exquisite way. But at the time I was stressed and I'm like, oh my gosh. And it was a lot of logistics. I think that it was stressful when there was a couple of places where I literally, and one of them I talk about in Greece in chapter 5 or 6, where I'm like down to the wire and it's the day of, and like I need a place to sleep that night. And so that was a little stressful because I didn't know what to do. And I wasn't sure if anyone was going to come through. So I would say those were like the more logistically stressful points. I surprisingly was not as worried about my safety as most of people who would hear about my journey was. I honestly, and Natalie, I think it's important to disclaimer here that when I talk about my story, or when anyone talks about their story, I think it's really important to kind of point to like, this is something that is inherent to my personality, and this is something that is a skill set that I had to build, because it feels a little unfair sometimes. Like you were
Yeah.
saying, you're a homebody. Like I'm an extrovert, you know, and there's certain ways that I'm naturally built that give me a quote unquote competitive advantage to being able to do certain things.
Hmm.
I'm naturally built to be very social. I'm really good with people. I'm very, very resourceful in a lot of ways. And so, so yeah, this piece around safety is like a mentally, I had 1,001 reasons to be scared multiple times on this trip. Like there was many times where I'm like, oh, this could mentally like be very, very sketchy. But I'm highly intuitively driven, and I just, there's this feeling that comes in my body, and I have gnosis. Like I just know. And so whatever my mind's doing is just something I need to mitigate, but I know, and I've known it since I was a very young child. So just like
Yeah.
disclaimer of
Yeah.
why I felt I wasn't so worried about my safety. But the real challenges were actually were internal. The biggest challenges that I faced was, the first is that even though I had left New York City for many reasons, I felt stressed, I felt unhappy, I felt like I was on a hamster wheel all the time. But I didn't know back then what I know now about the subconscious mind, and that, you know, wherever you go, there you are. I didn't understand that principle. And so I basically, even though I had a completely different lifestyle, I started to unconsciously recreate the very same patterns that kept me trapped and caged in New York City. I started to, you know, figuratively copy and paste them into this new life that I was building, which made it making it unnecessarily difficult for myself. So just, you know, things like overbooking, overbooking myself, like needing to run from one place to the other, constantly being busy, not getting enough hours of sleep, not like respecting my body and taking good care of my body. I replicated a lot of those patterns, and then which was sobering, and is something I also talk about in the book, where it's like, well, I have a completely different life, so who am I going to blame now? My boss? Like, who is to blame? And I
Uh-huh.
realized that it was me. Like, it's me. I'm the problem. It's me, right? So I had a really sobering awakening around the ways that I was the one who was making my life difficult and miserable, and that allowed me to then open up to the idea that if I caused it, then I can resolve it. And so this was really my first initiation in authorship and autonomy of my own life and my own decisions. And then the second part internally that I found to be incredibly challenging was reckoning with the trauma and the pain that started to bubble up as a result of me, you know, doing this work. There's a phrase I really love that I really agree with, which is after the ecstasy laundry. When we
I love
have
that.
big
I love
awakening,
that.
we make a big decision to like embody more of our soul journey, to come into the light, to basically like walk towards something that has a lot of light in it, that is in alignment to us. Yes, there's all these incredible, you know, yes, I'm in alignment and everything's clicking together, but there's a lot of things that then start to fall apart. And what it basically does is that the light of this awakening starts to illuminate the places and spaces in your
Exactly.
unconscious where you have been hiding, where you've been repressed, where you've
Exactly.
been not actually facing the truth. And so my first initiation into this was, you know, and this is something I talk about in chapter 7 and 8, was realizing, like, I went to a meditation retreat with Osho, and I had no idea who Osho was. I had no idea what dynamic meditation
And
was.
just for our listeners, if you don't know who Osho is, he's
Yeah.
a really well-known mystic and meditation master. So it's also fine if you are listening, you're like, who's Osho? But he's worth looking
Yeah.
up if
Yeah.
it's something that is speaking to you.
It's quite he's quite a character.
Yes.
You know, arguably some of his retreat centers were cult-like. The one I was in definitely had those vibes. And I basically like was dropped into this meditation retreat that like was very culty, and was being asked to do these really like deep exercises that had me excavating into my subconscious in ways that didn't. I was not an experienced meditator. I was not on a spiritual, like all the things, right? I
Yep.
just didn't know. And all of these things from my past started to bubble up, and I just didn't have the tools or capacity to deal with it. So it was very difficult to basically have to reckon with parts of my past that had caused me to mistrust people in the first place. And I had to look at them and I had to deal with them in order for me to reconcile, reintegrate that shadow, actually process the grief that I had been numbing, distracting, and avoiding for all of those years, so that I could move forward in light, like really, literally, like with lightness of being towards my soul's journey.
Well, what you're describing, Celine, I think it can resonate with so many people and resonates with me in many ways. And the first thread I just want to pull on, right? I think it's a very common feeling that we have as humans, that when we feel like we need to make a change, we make some drastic change on the outside. And we think, okay, if I go live with 70 strangers in 18 countries, I'll feel differently. In my case, when I was about 40, when I call it burnout in my books, but it really was just a breakdown. It was my dark night of the soul. I was so disconnected from who I am and what I'm here to do that everything. I mean, I was running a company that I had to shut down. I stopped being able to function. And for me, I did a mini version of what you did. It was my kind of version of the Under the Tuscan Sun with Diane Lane, that movie. But I went to Tuscany to paint because I'd always wanted to paint. I never let myself because I considered it frivolous and a waste of time. And so I went on this 10-day long retreat to Tuscany to paint. And lo and behold, what I learned is, wow, I came with it. I did not feel miraculously better. I did fall in love with painting, but just like you, right, wherever you go, there you are. And so I think there is this like allure that, if I change my circumstances, if I change where I live, if I change my job, I will feel better or differently. And as you write in the book and as you just shared, actually what the change, you came with it, but it allowed you to start seeing some of the internal patterns that we all have that are actually the things we need to work on and through. And that's something, people have said that I'm obsessed with change. I mean, this is the work I do, right? I like the podcast, my speaking, like my mentorship is use change as a catalyst. Change is not good or bad itself. It's just a catalyst for us to become more of who we truly are. And I love that that's essentially what you experienced. Can you share, and I love that you gave specific examples. I think that's also useful of how the same patterns were playing out, like the overscheduling, the, staying busy. For me, just when I went on my little retreat, it was constantly kind of sharing what I was doing, because one of the patterns that I've had to really work through is just getting approval from others, from my parents, right? And so I was on this retreat and I just wanted to get away from everybody, from my family, my husband, but then I was sharing nonstop. And it wasn't until like years later, in my case, that I realized, I was just replaying the same pattern. I was just doing it from Tuscany with painting in front of me, right? So what, because you said that you didn't quite have the tools to, so what did you do? Like, what did you do? Because I think a lot of people resonate that as well. Sometimes we feel things come up. We're not like quite sure. What did you do?
I fell on my face a lot, and I just kept endeavoring to learn, and it's the path of the alchemist. It's the shamanic path. It's the path of the spiritual journey. We learn through lived experience. There is only so much that we can learn. Similar to you, I'm very obsessed with change, both the art and the science of change. And so, I have studied change up the wazoo in terms of like, what does the brain do? Like what's happening, the belief, thoughts, emotions, actions. I've also studied the shamanic component of like every day is a good day to die, like how to actually die to ourselves, and the ego death and the soul death, and or the dark night of the soul rather. And so study. But at the end of the day, like we learn through just lived experience. And so again, me today is articulating this with you with like precision and clarity, where you're like, oh yeah, I know what you're talking about. Me back then had no fucking idea. And so when I track into past me, even the other day I had a catch up after like years of with a gentleman that was like mentoring me when I was in advertising in New York City, and I hadn't spoken to him in like 5 years, and he was like, "Oh, I remember you back then," and I was like, "Please tell me more about what you remember," because I endeavor to stay connected to that version of me, but also I'm today's me, and he was like, "You were just so clear, like this is what you need to do, this is how you need to do it. I was never worried about you, like I was never concerned that you were going to take this and you were going to alchemize it into something greater." And so going back to, we go on the soul journeys that we go on because we are who we are, right? And so and these journeys are there to reveal to back to us who we are, right? Every single person that I met on that journey was a mirror, a key that gave me back a part of myself so I could remember who I was. I could remember that I am courageous. I could remember that I'm resourceful. I could remember that I'm intuitive. Like I could remember these things that I didn't know about me. And so I share this because as I was going through these really hard events, there was just this part of me that would always say, okay, what's the lesson here? What's the silver lining? That was always a part of me. I think about, I have a friend, one of my friends, he's mega successful. He's got like 20 million plus followers on Facebook, like really, really well known on the internet. And I interviewed him once and I was like, how? And he was like, since I was young, I believed in myself. I knew I was going to be great. Even when I was working in a grocery store and I was just wrapping sandwiches, making like $7 an hour, I believed that I would be great. And so it's like, how do you explain that? How do you explain that a 17-year-old boy in Poland thinks he's great when nothing in reality is mirroring that back to him in that moment in time? It's his soul. It's his it's his nature. And so to me, like my nature has been, okay, shit's gone down. What's the solution? Shit's gone down. How do I make this into gold? Like, how do I mine this? How do I alchemize this? How do I I'm not available to be miserable about this. I'm not available to keep perpetuating the story of this thing. Let's move forward. And so, as you'll see in the book, even at 25, when I didn't have a fraction of the, training that or experience that I have today, I was like, I'm going to fall on my face and then I'm going to get back up. I'm going to dust off my knees and I'm going to ask myself, how did I fall? How do we prevent that from happening? And what systems do we need to put in place to adjust that from happening again? I thought like that since I've been thinking this way since I was young, but I share it because it's systems thinking, right? Like it's a good way it's not just a gift that I had, it's a skill that gets to be trained.
Sure. And I think, I want to talk about the strangers being mirrors. So I just want to, I hate the expression putting a pin on it. It's the leftover of my tech world speak that I haven't washed out of my system fully in 10 years, but I want to come back to that. Let's come back to that part of the canvas. How about we use that language? But just to what you just now said, I think it's a beautiful way to articulate. For you, it was intrinsic, just like for your friend was just natural to think that he will be great, even though he was in Poland wrapping sandwiches. For some people, it is not. I, for example, grew up in a very different way with very different culture where like life is suffering, bad things happen all the time, watch out for the bad things. And yet I have cultivated that skill of looking at things that don't work out as, oh, okay, well, how is this good for me anyway? Right. And I actually think of it less as a silver lining and more if we just expand beyond that moment in time and beyond ourselves, there's always a lesson in there or a way to grow. Right. So I love that you talk about it and share it as a way it's intrinsic to you, but it is also something that anyone truly can start to cultivate. Right. So I love that. I just want to go back to strangers being mirrors because I think there's a big gem in there in what you shared. And I want you to share more about that. And I just want to share a memory that you brought up when you were saying that I haven't thought about. Well, I don't think I've thought about it in years. So during that really difficult time for me, like after my breakdown, it was a couple of years, but this takes time. So it was about a year after, and I was on this cruise. It was this entrepreneurial thing, and they did a cruise. I mean, it sounds kind of absurd when I say it, but that's what it was. And there, I went to a yoga class. I had no idea what this yoga class was. I'd never seen this teacher. I was in the back because life was miserable at the time. I hated everyone except myself, and I'd done a little yoga. So I'm in this class. We do this stuff, and then afterwards, I'm rolling up my mat, and the teacher comes over, and he looks at me and he goes, "What's your name?" And I'm like, "Well, Natalie." And he's like, "You're a teacher." And I was like, "Oh, no, no, no. I'm not a yoga teacher. I just do yoga." And he grabbed my hand and he looked at me and said, "No, you're a teacher." And I had no idea at the time I was like, wow, what a whack job. Like, leave me alone. He thinks I'm a yoga teacher. He didn't mean I was a yoga teacher. He was trying to mirror back to me that the path for me that I was resisting so much is I am a teacher, not of yoga, but this is who I am, right? And once I started to open up to that, everything started to shift. So I'm very grateful to him. I've never seen him since. I actually don't remember his name, but in a way, he was a very forceful mirror that I actually didn't see at the time. Can you talk a little bit more about that? Because I actually think that that's true always, that the people we meet are there for a reason. They are to mirror something. Can you talk a little bit more about some of your experiences? Maybe you can share one or two stories that really stayed with you of somebody who was a really clear mirror or a difficult mirror or a beautiful mirror.
Yeah, I mean, it's true always, always, right? And I do think, the philosophy of every single person is a mirror is one that I have found to be true, and in the day-to-day life can be a little bit exhausting because
Oh,
you got
yes.
coffee to get, kids to like get dressed, you got the job that's like when it's 3 p.m. and Sally's just like at the printer, like frustrating you. It's sometimes not the time to be like, oh, Sally, thank you so much for being a mirror. I
Yeah.
mean,
Yeah.
that is definitely the more enlightened way to go about it.
Yes.
But I just want to like say
I'm
that
with you.
because I was on a quest to remember and remember who I was, and also like receive clarity on my soul's journey. I had a lot of time, bandwidth, and capacity to every single day be paying attention and giving attention to every single conversation that I was having, and then walking away and contemplating on what that could mean to me, right? And I want to be fair because I think if that same, I don't even think I can do that right like this week. You know what I mean?
Yeah. Yeah.
It
So
was
every
it was
person is a mirror, but it doesn't mean that every person we meet and every
yeah,
interaction
that
we
we
have,
have
we
to
have to
like
stand there, right?
exactly. But it is very valuable when you're having a challenge with somebody, or, especially if it's like people who are close to you and you're like, huh, like, what is this person mirroring back to me about myself? It's a great way for us to awaken and shift our perspective. Great tool when it comes to our spiritual evolution. But in this specific context of the book, I was actively asking the bigger questions of life. I was saying, God, source, universe, why am I here? What am I here to do? Where do I go next? Whether it was on my knees in despair, like, what do I do next? I'm so lost. Or like, okay, what do I do next? This was fun, right? And every other shade in between. I would meet people, and somehow miraculously I would pray the evening before, asking like, can you please give me direction on what city I need to go next? Or like, where is it that where I need to be? Now, when next day meet a person would say, there's a meditation retreat at this place at this time, and it would align perfectly with where I needed to be next. And so it's like these moments of constant serendipity and, if I was being really hard on myself, thinking, gosh, like, I'm such a loser because I quit my job. And then the next day I would meet somebody who had quit their job and had now was an incredibly successful businessman, right? And had a similar story to mine. And so I was constantly it was like I was playing this call and response with the universe very proactively, where I would ask a question and then the universe would put a person in front of me who had the answer to that exact inquiry that I had. And notably, there was one moment which I talk about in the book when I was in Hawaii, and this was at the tail end of my journey. And I was starting to get a little nervous because I thought, okay, I'm on the tail end of my journey. There's this much left in my bank account. I still have no idea what I'm going to do when this is over. Cool, but like, do I go back to New York? How do I like generate money? Like, how do I contribute to society? I don't know. I have no idea. And I remember sitting in Hawaii with a woman who was hosting me. And she started to talk to me about this difficulty that she was Brazilian, and she had immigrated with her husband, who's American, to Hawaii. And so she had like, she was a full-on certified therapist in Brazil, went to university there, and now she was doing like massage therapy. And she was just feeling really bad about herself because she didn't feel like she could actually like build a name and significance for herself in this new country. And there was all these like limitations that she was putting on herself. There was all these contractions, and I would just be like, I just knew what to say. I just knew what to say. I was like, well, have you thought about this? She'd be like, no, I never thought about this. And then she'd be like, oh, but I can't possibly like, I would tell her, have you spent some time on your own without your husband to really think about this? No, I can't do this. I was like, why not? Like, and I just knew how to challenge her. I intuitively knew when I had to like give her fire and when I had to back off and be more gentle. Long story short, I end up coaching her without knowing I was doing that. And then her husband comes and I end up coaching them as a couple and basically resolving this huge issue that they've been having with each other for years in like a conversation. And the reason why I know that I resolved it is because 6 months later, she texts me and she's like, I did that solo trip that you told me to. I'm applied for a green card. We just purchased our first house. If I hadn't met you, none of that would have happened. Thank you so much for that conversation. And I realized like, oh, whoa, one conversation with me will change the game. And it started happening not once, but twice, but 3 times. And it started to compound to the point where I realized that when people were having an interaction with me, something in their life was profoundly shifting. And that was a way that, for example, this woman mirrored back to me a gift that I didn't know that I had, that I didn't have a name for. And in fact, when I went off to start my marketing consulting at First Business, and then a year later, one of my clients referred to me as their coach. I was like, what's a coach? And then I realized, okay, advisory and coaching people like is a gift that I have, but I didn't have the words. Did not know what it was. It was just something that I knew how to do, but I wouldn't have known that if people hadn't mirrored
Without
back
her.
to me how that supported them.
I love that story so much for so many reasons, but one dimension of it, I actually yesterday I host these virtual Daring Women salons. You'll have to come to one where it's, women that I've worked with and we'll pick a topic, I'll have guests. And so yesterday we were talking about turning your passion or your interest into a business. And I actually had 2 other wonderful women entrepreneurs with me who are my friends from Mexico City. And we got to talking about purpose. And that each of us kind of shared how our business is really a reflection of what we feel is our mission. And there were a couple women there who very honestly shared, they were like, look, I don't know what my purpose is. Like, I have no idea what my purpose, and actually I feel a lot of pressure. And these are women like in their 40s, 50s. Like, I don't know what my purpose is. And something that I shared that we talked about is, we think of purpose as some big, floaty, giant, golden, sparkly thing out there, and we have to go and find it and then make it our own, where actually it is within us, right? We just have to uncover it. I mean, that's the whole book, The Alchemist, right? As like he thinks it's out there, it's within him, and it's in a way the
It's my
story
favorite
that
book,
you,
by the way.
oh, of course, right?
This book
But it's in
is
a way.
inspired by The Alchemist.
I love it. I mean, if you haven't, listeners, if you have not read The Alchemist, please go read The Alchemist. I think it's like one of those being human 101 requirements. But in the same way, like your experience with this woman in Hawaii revealed, maybe not immediately, maybe right through layers, but your purpose, right? Like your gift. And this is, I think, a really beautiful illumination of our purpose is within us. And actually, it is the way I think about it, it is the way we live our life in the way we impact others. We all have a gift. I think we actually all have many. And our purpose is just to uncover those gifts and share them in a way that feels wonderful and abundant and beautiful to us. And I love the way that this woman was your mirror for you uncovering that gift within yourself, that purpose. Even if you didn't have the words for it at the time, doesn't matter, but you had that, like it was on your face when you were sharing it. You were like, oh, this is something that well, this was natural for me and I love doing it. And look, it helped someone else. And so, can you talk a little bit about the question that I want to ask you? You know, I'm thinking about a lot of people that I work with who are listening to this. And I know some of them are thinking, well, Celine, it was wonderful. You were 25, you didn't have a lot of responsibilities. You could just take off and travel the world. I'm a working mom of two. I have a mortgage, I have a job, I have a family. Like I can't go do that to like uncover the stuff I need to work on. What are some insights or wisdom or suggestions that you share with people like that?
Yeah. So some insights, and I also want to just backtrack for a moment on what you said about purpose, because one of the things I realized on this journey is that purpose is not a thing that I know what it is and then I walk towards it. You actually won't know until hindsight. It's a path that becomes illuminated by the way that you're walking. And even when I teach it to clients and students, it's about actually getting, like for me, I knew travel, meet people, write. Those were my core pillars. Walk in alignment to those pillars. And now, and then that evolved into my values and what it is that matters to me the most. And so if we're walking the path of our values, if every step we take is in alignment, we inevitably end up in our purpose, and we actually can't even connect the dots until we look backwards. And so for anyone who's also listening, being like, oh, I feel that with the purpose, it's a frequency that you tap into. Like I'm on purpose is a feeling. It's not a thing that you check off a box. It's a feeling of I'm on purpose. You just feel it. You are or you aren't. Just like you feel if you're in love or you're not. And there's ways that you can connect to your purpose right now, which is act in accordance to your values and as the person that you know you're here to be. And you're on purpose.
Beautiful. That's
And
beautiful.
then you act from that place, and the results that will mirror back to you your purpose. The same way that I had to walk this path for me to arrive to Hawaii and have this woman who I happened to be with and was able to mirror back to me the gift. Like I had to go on a whole journey for me to have that moment
Yeah,
of
beautiful.
trusting myself, of trusting my voice, of being in alignment. And then the moment came to me and it found me. And I was sober and awake enough to see it as it was happening, which is another thing. And so to go now back to the working woman, like, and I was 25, I didn't have responsibility. It's true. I had an unfair advantage. I believe that. I know that. And I wrote this book to mitigate for that. I wrote this book. One of the reasons I wrote this book and I do the work that I do is because I've spent the last 10 years being absolutely fucking obsessed with how to make what I went through accessible to anyone, including the working mother. If you're in your 50s, 40s, 60s, it doesn't matter if you're incredibly busy or not busy. Like through working with thousands of leaders across all different industries, all different places in their life, like I have really just been studying like how do we navigate change no matter what point of our lives that we're in. And you know, when you have kids and like a mortgage to pay and you're in your 50s, like there's a different level of complexity, but you also have what the 25-year-old does not have, which is wisdom, hopefully resources, more connections, right? So if we really put it down, like on the 3D realm, like the 25-year-old who's got no connections, or sorry, no ties or no, they're free to do whatever they are. It looks on paper like, yes, they're going to have an easier time, but they also don't have what you have 30 years later and everything that you've acquired as an experienced human with a lot of lived wisdom, right?
Yeah.
And so what I would say is that it's not about, and this is where I know a big objection that I've received for people when I'm working with them or when I'm sharing my story, it's like that, like I can't just do a huge leap of faith and leave everything behind like that. I like what you said, I have kids, I have a mortgage, I have responsibilities. But what I would invite you into is like look less at the superficial story of like, and then she took a leap and slept in the homes of over 70 people in 18 countries. Like that's the entertainment, you know, per The Alchemist or The Odyssey. Like that's the cool journey, that the summer read that keeps you entertained and like, you know, on your toes and like what's going to come next. But underneath it is the thorough line of what it actually means to accept that the old life that you once lived no longer suits you, that you have to, if you want to evolve and give yourself the opportunity to step into a new, more connected, better life, you will have to give things up of the old life. There will be a moment where you're going to have to ask for that divorce. There will be a moment where you will need to learn how to, you will need to put down the bottle. There will be a moment where you'll need to learn some skills on how to take your work week from 60 hours to 45 hours or 40 hours. Like there's a moment where you're gonna need to reckon with your old belief systems. You're going to have uncomfortable conversations. You're gonna need to let people, situations, circumstances go in order for you to step into a new paradigm of being. And if that is as simple as just having the courage to ask for the divorce, and it doesn't have to be, I'm going to fly across the planet and sleep in the homes of strangers. Underneath it is actually the stuff, the soul stuff of I am evolving. I accept, and not only that, I'm a yes to crossing the threshold of change. I'm a yes to letting go of the old and learning how to be with the discomfort. And I am a yes to being a beginner and learning a new skill, doing it imperfectly, asking people for help, figuring out how to ask for people for help if I have that. So it's really the underbelly, which is that thorough line that's underneath, which is what is the person that you need to be, what skills you need to develop, and where do you need to find your strength when it comes to making a significant shift in your life. And that's what I want you to pay attention to. And for those of you who end up reading my book, same thing. Very entertaining story. It's fun. It's cool. Like I designed it like The Alchemist so that you're going on a really cool journey with me, but like pay attention to the actual themes underneath, which is who do you need to become in order for you to say yes to soul.
I love that. Well, that's a beautiful place to wrap, although we could talk about this for a long, long time, but I just want to, in kind of connecting from my experience with yours, and when I went through kind of we all go through our experiences. I had the mortgage, I had the kid, I had the husband, I had the job, all the things. And in retrospect, I am actually grateful for all of that because there's a lot of richness of lessons that was available to me without me having to go anywhere. Right. And so just to build on what you're saying, what I would say to everyone listening, and whatever your situation is, actually having responsibilities and having attachments and having people and complexity is a gift because there's a lot of wonderful learning opportunities there, lessons, and a lot of beautiful mirrors that you don't have to go across the world. You could just turn to your family or your friend or the person you meet in the coffee shop. And I actually think seeing our responsibility as blessings and looking for what is that, right? Like I talk about the fact that I'm not sure, Celine, if I wasn't a mom when I was going through my dark night of the soul, I don't mean to be dramatic. I'm not sure where I would have taken that. I was really in a dark place, but because I was a mom, I knew I had to be here and I wanted to feel better. I wanted to improve how I felt. I'm incredibly grateful for that responsibility in my life. If I didn't have it, if I didn't feel responsible to my daughter Mia, not just as her mom, but to show her that her mom, and therefore she can make changes and feel happier, I'm not sure where I would have ended up. I'm not sure that would have been a good place. And so I just wanted to add that because I think it's very beautiful what you said. Tell us again about the name of your book and when it's available and where we can purchase it.
Yes, so I have it right next to me. It's called The Burning Ground. The subtitle is One Woman's Journey to Reclaim Her Soul and Ignite Her Inner Fire. So this book drops to the public on May 26th of 2026, depending on when you're watching this. And you can go ahead and purchase it at theburningground.com. You're going to want to do this through me instead of Amazon because when you go to theburningground.com and get your copy, you also are going to get over $200 of bonuses, so which includes my guided meditation to support you to actually reestablish your connection to your soul voice. So that intuition, for those of you who are like, I know I'm not hearing my intuition. I literally have a meditation that I include that helps you rebuild those neural pathways and get connect to yourself again. There's also a reader's guide for those of you who are like super nerdy and want to go into the themes, like what we did today, that goes like deeper into the themes as well as the soul inquiry prompts that are included throughout the book that allow you to go deeper into your own internal journey as you're reading it with me, which is why this also acts as a companion. There's a book of ebook of quotes, like the best quotes from this book. So there's
Love it.
lots of like fun bonuses that come through when you purchase it, when you support the launch, purchase it before May 26th. And yeah, you don't miss out on that.
Beautiful. We will, of course, have a link in the show notes that you can all easily click on. Celine, before you go, at the end of the episode, I always give a dare to my audience, but actually, I feel inspired today that you should give the dare. So, what is something that you feel moved to dare people to do who are listening to this?
Oh God, goodness gracious, I love it. So I dare you to go up to a stranger this week and give the stranger 15 minutes of your dedicated attention. Ask them questions, just listen to them deeply. And by the way, that's the premise of my TEDx talk as well, like an unconventional approach to human connection. You can watch that if you need a little bit of courage, but go up to somebody at a coffee shop, train station, like just talk to them. 15 minutes, 1-5 of your attention on them, and see what happens when you're just curious and just wanting to get to know this person.
I love this so much. Also, just created a new tradition. I'm going to have my guests do the dare when I have a guest. I love it. Thank you for going first, Celine. That's an awesome dare. Celine, thank you so much for being here, for sharing yourself so openly. It's a true gift to share the space with you, to be inspired by you. So grateful we could have this conversation. And listeners, that's it for today's episode of Dare Yourself. And I always invite you, if this conversation moved something in you or inspired something in you, please share it with one other person who might need it right now. Share that gift with them. And follow the show so you don't miss what's coming next. I'm Natalie Kogan. Until next time, go dare yourself.